Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't. Don't take it, don't.
I am Oren Slavsberg. I have the honor to be the part of the Commonweal community, and there are many others here. I want to express my gratitude to you for holding this space and making this place happen. So thank you. It's hard to talk about Commonweal in just a few moments, but there's some stories that are important to know. And one of the stories is Michael Lerner, who I will point out, though he may not want. Hi, Michael. Michael was walking down Poplar Street on the other side of the field. And after being in Bolinas for a few years, he got a message that says, this is a place where you need to create a community for healing ourselves and healing the earth. That was 50 years ago. So we came into this place, which at the time was a radio station run by RCA. And RCA, well, he actually called them up and said, hey, would you give me your radio station so I can start a center for healing ourselves and healing the earth? And they said, sure, no. They said, no, but you can buy it. And through different circumstances, it was bought by Trust Public Land. It was then donated to the National Park Service. But we've been fortunate to be here for 50 years. Commonweal stories are complex, but one thing to know is that we're sourced in our Cancer Help Program, which is a week-long retreat for people with cancer. And there's something that happens to communities that focus around these kind of questions of how to live and how to die. And I think that really is the beating heart of Commonweal. And out of that, a lot of different bodies of work emerge, including our environmental health work, which is spearheaded by the collaboration Health and the Environment, and our work in the area of the polycrisis, or the great unraveling, or the metacrisis. But the idea that there's a lot of existential threats to the planet, and as we learn by working with people with cancer, that you sometimes have to look at where you are and where you're going, the same thing is true for the polycrisis. The same thing is true for this great turning, that sometimes you just have to look and ask how we're going to get there. There are many other stories. There are 30 programs at Commonweal that cover youth and arts. We have a program in our Commonweal Garden that is asking, how do we integrate nature into the practice of medicine? We have people that are training prisoners in California jails on how to support their fellow inmates as they die. There's a lot of different works that happen here, and the work has been spreading. You know, it's kind of interesting and intimidating to be in a room with so many people that are doing so much amazing work. And I think with that, I get to introduce Lynn. I met Lynn at Commonweal in 2014 at the Fall Gathering, and we dove into a conversation about regenerative philanthropy, and here we are 11 years later. Lynn has since took this and helped found the Transition Resource Circle, which actually focuses on philanthropy and the subject of this panel. She's also the author of the Post-Capitalist Philanthropy book, which I would also highly recommend.
Greetings to all of you here in the room, to all of your relations, to all of you in whatever places that you are. Greetings to your waters, to your ancestors, to your lands, to your ways of knowing and being. Greetings to anything that you are feeling in these times. Greetings to my brothers and sisters and kin that I have the honor to walk with. So, liberating wealth in prophetic times. As Oren said, I have the honor to steward something called the Transition Resource Circle. And really our core prayer is, how do we heal, liberate, and alchemize wealth in these times in service of life? I would say perhaps dignified life and death in these times. And the way that we move is with an assemblage of humans, of more than humans, of many ways of knowing and many ways of being to guide us, what we sometimes call circle ways or spiral ways. And so this is representative of this kind of assemblage that we walk with deep wisdom keepers, cosmologists, system architects, funder activists, and others. And while it gets intense sometimes, we also like to move with joy and play. And so join us. It's an ever-expanding circle of allies. And maybe just a word of liberating wealth in prophetic times. And you'll notice that we have a Taj James here in place of a Vanessa Andreotti, which is beautiful and perfect. I'm invoking her in this spirit of liberation. We were having a conversation the other night, and we were speaking about where liberation still sits within some of the Abrahamic religions. And what we were speaking about that actually is longing for liberation is moving from ontologies, ways of constructing reality themselves that are binary in subject, as in doer, to the do, to the thing, this subject-object relationship. And if we all know wisdom traditions that say that there is a path of liberation from wherever you might say ego or others take false refuge. So it's in this spirit that we're invoking, the spirit of liberation. And in wealth can mean all manner of things and doing. It can be the money. It can be the abundance that is the Gaian Entelechy offering so generously with us in every moment. Capitalism, philanthropy, neoliberalism, like there's, through whatever gateway you come to, we come to this piece of wealth. And we're here to explore that and the dimensions of where they live, those concepts and those thought forms live within us and are embodied within us and live and express through our actions and ways of being and our cultures and systems, and perhaps even certain constructs of wealth that are driving us to the brink to even say that we are in these prophetic times. And in that, whether your epistemological gateway is positivism and you read that report about how many planetary boundaries we have crossed and that is your prophecy, or whether your prophecies are other wisdom traditions, or whether your prophecies are bowing your head to the earth and listening again. Some call this the moment of the metacrisis, the polycrisis, the permacrisis. We can all feel the trembling in ourselves and in our bones that has us here. So that's enough out of me. And I'm going to ask our beloveds here to respond to some questions, and then we'll see how we weave together. Yeah? And we felt to begin with Pat. And ask Pat some big questions. What does money want right now? What is wealth? And anything that may be here for you to share right now about these times that we find ourselves walking.
So I want to say Yat-e, greetings to each and every one who finds yourself here in this moment, and give thanks to everything that conspired to bring us all together to this moment, and even our ancestors. And I'm carrying this fossil of a shell, sort of to remind me about time. A lot of time going on here. So I'll say also, she'e'iya tachi nishni aro ashi ibashishchi ma'adish gejne dasha nale and klauschi daushiche guatawastani nishni. So I am from Dene Nation, and I really enjoy having an opportunity to speak that ancient language here in this place, to greet the language that this Mother Earth gave to the people here. Sometimes I say culture is not a human construct. Culture is the Mother Earth expressing herself as human being in any given place. And so from that place of instruction, that place of orientation, from this Mother Earth where I come from, in this superimposed nation state upon indigenous continent that we sometimes call the United States, I bring that in greeting to this land here and her way of instructing all the life here, but also the five-fingered ones here. And I guess as I say that, I feel like having some awareness of this lineage of humanity is a wealth. What does money want? I was telling this story about how in a meditation in front of my altar, I came upon, I asked the Mother Earth if I could go down inside of her, like go underground. And most of the time she says yes. Sometimes she says, you just need to just like lay upon me and have a nap. Like, we're not going to do that right now. so that's always a good moment too. But on this particular day, she said, come on down. And so there's been teachings that have come from underground. My people call the human being the holy earth surface walker. And obviously, we're not the only ones walking the surface of the earth, but that's an orientation. Some of our relatives are ground dwellers. Some are air, spend time in the air and the water, but we're in the category of holy earth surface walker. So I'm visiting another realm when I go down into this earth, and anyway, down there I encountered this face of a sun, and I call it mother sun. So for me, I usually think of sun as father sun, but this was mother sun, and it was this face talking to me in the ground. And she said, there's this very powerful spirit, there's this very powerful ally that would be your ally, but she can't. And I was like, oh no. And she said, yep, it'd be really good to have this one as an ally, but she just can't. And so I was like, well, who is this, and why not? And she said, this is the holy alchemical spirit of the money. And so I really point out that word alchemical. Why alchemical? Because at this point, she can become almost anything. Even love. We try it sometimes. But she can be that. And so I said, well, so why can't she be my ally? And this face said, well, she has pride, She's got pride too, and she can't tolerate. She said, because you treat her like a slave and a whore. So I had to really think and feel into that, and I'm still thinking and feeling into that. And then she said, so you human beings may have begun her, but your laser focus on her, all of your emotions and concerns and worry and joy and sorrow and such, and thinking about her all the time, all over this Mother Earth, that focus has given her so much energy that it has brought her to life. And now she's her own spirit, and she's claiming her volition for herself. And so she's going to decide what she wants to serve now. And I'm here to tell you that she wants to, this is still the face in the ground talking, I'm here to tell you that she says she is now only going to serve that which serves life, light, and love. That's what she wants to give her volition to. So you're going to begin to see things fall. And she'd be a great ally for you to have. But she can't. So anyways, I asked, well, how can I heal this? And she said, well, why don't you make a bundle for her? So I said, a bundle? Make a bundle. And I said, how would I do that? And the Spirit said, imagine a really dear sister, girlfriend that you wanted to both give her a gift and also represent her with sacred things. And, make it like that. So I did that. And then make an altar for her. And I really cringed at that because I was like, man, that is so new age, making an altar for the money. And she said, see, you're doing it again. You're treating her like a whore. You're treating her like something unholy, unsanctified. And so I said, okay. So I started this practice of, I have a cornucopia basket, and I have this bundle, and I feed her water and other things. And every time money comes in, I place it on this altar, and I acknowledge her, and I say, thank you for being my ally. So after about 2 years of doing this, I was at my altar again, and she came and she said, I trust you completely. You are aligned. Your work is aligned with that which serves the very highest possibility for life, light, and love. And so we are aligned. And so I guess I'll just say that along with Spirit telling me at one point, you have to get over this fear of what you call lots of money, like lots of money, kind of sarcastic almost. Thanks, Spirit. And because there's things I'm going to need you to do that are going to involve lots of money. And so you need to get over it. And so between that and this altar, every time the money comes in, I say, okay, ally, here we go. And so the last piece I'll add here is that, so the scale that Spirit has been training me with this whole thing with is getting bigger and bigger, sure enough. We're definitely heading into the territory of things I call lots of money. And so now we have this shorthand for what used to be very long, painful, arduous conversations where I'm like, that sounds like a lot of money. And Spirit's response to that is irrelevant. Irrelevant. Like, I can't be responsible for the kinds of things that you give valuation to in that way. I don't give it that valuation. This Mother Earth does not give it that valuation. This life is not giving it that valuation. It's just you up here. You're doing this. So I'm in this process of having those constructs be dismantled and dissolved. And I say I have to abandon human logic and human valuation system and move into spirit logic and spirit valuation system, earth valuation system, life valuation system. And with this ally who wants to serve the very highest possibility for life, light, and love, so many things are opening and parting. That's what I know about it, sort of.
Any one of these incredible beings could speak to us for some hours, could impart some wisdom for these hours, and we'll keep on weaving. Taj, you steward, in many ways, something that is at the heart of what this entire panel is about, full spectrum capital. And I've often referenced that what you speak to is money wants to flow like water, and water flows to the lowest places, and everything of money and wealth that is not flowing is continuing to perpetuate the legacies of colonization and beyond. And I just want to ask you, what do you want to share with us and impart with us about how we do the dam removal, and also how we navigate the hungry ghost that keeps compounding the hungry ghost, and navigate, this real spirit of liberation and what you're learning about wealth.
It's an honor to be with you all. The words that just came to me was a story shared by an amazing leader on these lands. Her name is Judge Abby. She was a federal judge and a Yurok tribal judge, and she's a part of a community in a Ohlone territory in San Francisco called The Village. created by some of Pat's relatives who were forced to come here after being released from boarding schools, not allowed to return to their homes and their land. And they came here and they created a center for healing. And they have this vision for a village, for a place where the community can come back together to heal and grow. And what Judge Ivy shared in a circle that I was in not long ago was that Auntie Helen's vision for the village is not a dream, it's a memory. So I think that one thing I really want to communicate is we're in this moment of difficulty, and the future that we yearn for and dream of, and it already happened and it's already here. And part of the magic of what this conversation is going to help reveal is the truth of that. So I have to say thank you to my sister Pat, because I had been, I have to acknowledge Dr. King's vision of beloved community, brought back to me through Grace Lee Boggs, brought back to me through Thich Nhat Hanh, brought back to me through recent ancestor, Puanani Burgess, who all are practitioners in this dream of beloved community. And at the heart of that dream is this recognition that there is nothing outside the circle of the sacred, nothing. The circle of the sacred encompasses all, everyone, all of us, all of our relatives. And as someone whose work in the world now has been trying to help to draw the energy out of the systems that are collapsing and help that energy move into the fields of regeneration and repair and growth, and being this, trying to be as a clear channel and a conduit so that energy can flow where it wants to flow. I was in a Jubilee circle with which Pat helps to hold, and Pat shared the story with me that she just shared with you, and I realized that I was learning to listen to the water for what it had to say, listen to my sisters and really hear what they had to say, but it had never occurred to me to listen to the money. I had removed the money from the circle of the sacred. I had turned it into a thing, into an object. And the wisdom here is that there's no such thing as a thing.
There you go.
Everything's alive, everything's connected, everything has something to say if you're willing to listen. And somehow I felt, well, that's true of everything but this one thing. Everything but this one thing, because of it has caused us so much suffering, so many of us, those who've held on to too much of it for too long, suffering so deeply. Those who've had access to too little of it for too long, suffering so deeply, right? And it certainly must be the source of our suffering. And there was a truth that was revealed to me and is being revealed that it's not the spirit of this. It's not this, it's something else. It's my fear, right? It's still needing to awaken from the dream in which we were told that things were separate, that we were separate. And we're in this process of remembering and awakening and reimagining, and I get to, and you're going to hear more soon, but part of the, I'm kind of a plumber. It's just connecting the water pipes so that the water can flow, because what we water grows. And if we water our fears will grow. If if we water our hopes and dreams will grow. And, this is a time for us to release and let go. So to let the water go, let the energy go, let the resources go where it wants to go. And we just have to listen. And it's already happened. And it's already happening. Yeah, it's just beautiful to be with all of you. And much of what he does is a version of what I do. We do slightly similar, different versions of the same thing, but in beautifully complementary ways. So that's the other thing I'll just say about the sort of ecosystems that are emerging here is that lots of like beautiful redundancy, and the differences, the very small differences, are hugely meaningful. They're like world creating meaningful, because the values, the insights, the principles are consistent, but it's like these things are racinated, they're rooted in place, and this place is not this place, and this place is not this place, and this river is not this river. If you've listened to one river, you've heard one river. If you've talked to one foundation, you've talked to one foundation. Anyone heard that one? That's one in our business. And sometimes we have to say, well, at our family office, but anyway. So that's our strength. That is our strength. And with that, I will stop rambling and pass it along.
Brother Bayo, you wrote a paper about philanthropy. Paraphilanthropy, giving money its freedom papers. You're coming today from speaking at another event with philanthropy, aptly named The Confluence. And I'm wondering, as you come back from that, as you listen into what does it mean to give money its freedom papers, as we invoked the animate spirit of money, we've invoked alchemy and portals and prophetic times. What is the confluence that you have for us here?
I'm on the verge of tears because, and I don't know why. I'm not sure why. So I started to wiggle a little bit just to maybe make sense of it. And what is surfacing is that I haven't had time to process what I just experienced today. I'm feeling very exhausted. It was an eruption in a room of business folks, people who wear suits. I wasn't expecting that kind of resonance, but there's a readiness that is strange. Even less, I haven't had time to process the energy I'm feeling coming into the United States. I just landed. I mean, it hasn't been a week. Right from the airport, what Teresa Brennan wrote about the transference of affect. You could cut the feeling in the atmosphere with a knife. The sense that there's something else amiss. I watched a video, I was just telling this with my dear sister Victoria, that I got to know what elbows up means yesterday. You might not know, but it's a Canadian slang of resistance. Resisting American imperialism. Canada is saying elbows up. Go research what this means. But I was just reminded, elbows up is a very, very, it's almost like we will stand our ground, but it's also part of the logic of the trouble, right? We will brace ourselves in this position and we will push out everybody else that is telling us they want to make us the 51st state. And I don't know how to sit with that. I just felt that when I came into this country. And I'm sitting with what I shared just a while ago at Confluence. 5 days before he was murdered in Memphis, April 4th, 1968, Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King is in a room. He's just finished speaking with the Poor People's Campaign. Harry Belafonte comes into the room and notices agitation on Martin's face and says, "What's wrong? What's happening, brother?" And Martin, he probably was wiggling too. Probably was on the verge of tears, but he said to Harry, he said, Brother, we've been winning. We've actually done a lot of work together. Only 4 years ago in 1964, combination of Lyndon B. Johnson, Hubert Humphrey, we got the Civil Rights Act passed. We're getting legislative wins. Things are happening for our people. But why do I get this sense that we're integrating into a burning house? Why do I get this sense that we're See, this is seminal, this is monumental for Martin, because at that time, Martin's entire career was based on the idea that the moral arc of the universe is long and it dips towards justice. But then he had this crack, this gash in thought that invoked a different kind of idea, and he didn't have time to process it. He only had 5 days left. He was killed. But this seed of an idea came to him. He said, and I don't think he had the words for it, but if he had the words for it, he might have said that, yes, the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, but justice bends towards retrenchment and recapture. That even justice is misbehaving. That there is a cost to victory. There's a cost to victory that we're not talking about. That even victory is sloshing about the room. So the left and the right, the Civil Rights Act bled into the Republican Southern strategy in the 70s. The African anti-colonial movements from the 40s to the 70s, that bled into the neocolonialism and the globalizing ethic and white modernity of the 70s and the 80s, IMF, World Bank, right? Now the Obama era has sloshed into Trump era. The George Floyd 2020 is sloshing into the anti-woke corporate pullback on DEI. It's like we are in a circle. And the idea that we're heading straight down the line towards utility, towards progress, is being upset by this pattern that we're noticing, that Martin started to notice, and it was wiggling him, but he didn't have the words for, and he didn't have time to think it through because he was killed 5 days later. If you ask me what money wants, I think money is exhausted. I think money is exhausted. I think money has been serving the plantations of white modernity. And money has been working hard. It has been working hard within the neurotypical chrononormative vortices of utility. It has been serving the hospitality of whiteness, and it is tired. And now it wants to bleed, it wants to breathe, it wants to move, it wants to spill. I speak about autism, and I like to differentiate between autism and autism. I just said this to the people at Confluence. Autism is what my son has, or what has enlisted me and my son in some kind of dance. The other autism is spelled O-U-G-H-T-I-S-M. The autism that I ought to behave this way. It's the utility that this is how we ought to act. This is what it means to move. This is what it means to breathe. This is how to think of value. This is how we think of virtue, right? That is what money as a relationship, not a thing, Taj, thank you. Not a thing, but a relationship. That is what money has been tethered and anchored to. And there are stranger forms of abundance that are breathing through now. We just know, we need to know how to sit with it. And maybe that's what is being invited now. I think one of the madnesses of modernity is that we believe that to meet each other is to be compatible. That to encounter each other is to be compatible. You might hear about it in marriage counseling. What's your compatibility score, right? It's the idea the key has to fit into the keyhole. That's the idea. We speak about this all the time. But I don't think love is compatibility. In fact, I think love is an exquisite form of misalignment, right? We will never fully meet each other. The idea that we will meet each other fully, appropriately, correctly, is the thesis of modernity. Because it believes people are objects. But if we think of ourselves as flowing riverine relationships, then we will never fully meet each other, but we can dance with each other. It's an exquisite mispronunciation of the encounter. That's what love is. I think money is inviting us into a love relationship where love is the radical incompleteness of our ideologies, is the radical incompleteness of our identities. Love is inviting us into porosity, and money wants to do that too. Money cannot serve this politics of sloshing about histories. We need to ride this current and situate ourselves in the cracks where we might find other ways of being alive at this moment. I'll just keep quiet now.
Matthew, you have been a wealth steward. You have danced with money, with lands. You have been an interviewer of many, many people these last few years and really been listening for those who are stewarding, who are holding wisdom, who are attending lands, who are perhaps walking and trying to open these cracks. Some who perhaps might still be thinging the money on the thinging, on the thinging, on the thinging. And I want to ask in this moment how you dance with a provocation of using capital to liberate capital. And in a moment where we can all feel some sort of quaking going on in us that maybe this thing, this entity, this being that we have subscribed as calling capital, late stage capital, and then these things we call isms, that perhaps the value we subscribe to that is also getting its freedom papers. So using capital to liberate capital in a moment where the very notion of what we value as capital may be falling and crumbling.
I have been over here thinking about what feels more difficult, liberating wealth in prophetic times or following Bayo Akomolafe on a panel. Yeah, and just acknowledgments to Commonweal for having us. It's great to be with so many friends. I guess what I'd like to offer is just a bit of attention on the word money and what do we mean when we say this word. What I hear implicit usually is that we're talking about the US dollar, or we're talking about one of the other 189 nation state fiat currencies. And I think there's a lot of coherence and resonance amongst the speakers that it's time to compost the system as we know it. It's time to move into this new alchemical process and service to life. And what keeps me up at night is, can we do that with the current tools of money? Because embedded within those agreements, Orland Bishop was invoked a couple of days ago and said that money is the largest collective agreement on the planet. And I think it's agreements. And embedded within those agreements include who creates the money and who taxes the money and where do those budgets get set and how do all of the many different layers of the financial institutions operate. And so, yeah, what I've been thinking about and really resonating with Pat's comments about, to not treat money as unholy. Money is this incredible coordination tool, and there's 8 billion of us on this beautiful planet. And how are we going to continue to move with one another? And if we just pull back our complicity and consensus with the current currencies as we know, what are we going to be left with, and how are we going to move, and how are we going to trade, and how are we going to coordinate together? And I guess one version of the world is we think we're going to lessen our use of money itself, find alternative ways to be in reciprocity and relationship and bartering and coordination and communication and everything else, I would be more inclined to think that what money wants to become is that there's an evolution afoot, and that there is a more sophisticated way that we can think about money, and that there are new possibilities, and that the exhaustion is entangled in the exhaustion of the power structures that currently are embedded within the money. And so I get to be the one who Vanessa refers to as dangerous portals, invoke the idea of blockchain and crypto. Because the United States, the Coinage Act of 1692 was to create legal tender was punishable by death. That's been our history. And there's been incredible work for generations of experiments since then around local currencies and bioregional economies and different ways to think about how do we get in right relationship in place and move together. But there's been a challenge to really operate in that space and to do that. And I think that those structures are dismantling before our eyes. I think money is becoming digital before our eyes. I think it's becoming programmable. I think what the cryptocurrency space has presented us with is a new space of design. And I think that there's a lot that can be aligned with the intention and the spirit of putting life in the middle and going through this new alchemical process, but thinking about local currencies, thinking about nature-based tokens and currencies, thinking about relationship economies, thinking about how do we wrestle back our sovereignty and our freedoms in new ways. And if these are prophetic times, I think that should be on the table. So to Lynn's question of how do we use the capital to liberate capital, my best thinking on this is that we need to move the small amounts of philanthropy for those who want to take on this project and to be thinking about how do we catalyze the new plumbing, to Taj's point, and yeah, really work on the design of these new currencies and these new systems. And it's a big task, but I do think it's very exciting to be in that field of inquiry. So that's what I'll say for now.
We have a couple siblings who came flying across some big ponds and waters, came ashore in these times in this funky country. And Julian heads up something called Langkelly Chase. Those of you in the US haven't heard of it. In the UK context, they were known as one of the good guys in the philanthropoid theater, and funding system change, and really want to honor all the communities that they were supporting and who were doing beautiful work. And yet, even with all of that good work and upholding the tradition and the ritual of philanthropoid to grantee, there was a decision that was made that it was better to put Langkelly Chase out of its misery and not do it in a classic way that we think about spend downs, but do it in this way that was invoking something called redistribution. And so, Julian, my question for you is, why? And what are you learning about alchemy? Truly, what is required for state change, for some sort of transforming to come in?
Yeah. Thank you. It's wonderful to be among you all. It's wonderful and humbling to be on this panel with these speakers. Baljeet and I have traveled to these lands in search of solidarity and to bring questions about philanthropy, which are, as we Brits like to say, not everyone's cup of tea, to a much wider conversation about wealth and life. Philanthropy can be a slightly desiccated thing to talk about. It's an important thing because for so many people, their imaginations can only reach as far as philanthropy is prepared to fund. And philanthropy itself is an apology for capitalism. And we have an obligation to hold that critical inquiry with sacredness. And one of the things that this community has done for us, that Lynn and others has curated, is to help us ask the question of how to act in contextually relevant ways in the midst of a polycrisis. And I think one of the things that's abundantly clear to all of us is that in the midst of a polycrisis, money needs to move to radically different places in radically different ways. And that's hard when you're trying to contend with the needs and norms of institutions, powerful institutions, which have taken on a life of their own and are serving themselves as much as the communities that they seek to support. And draw all of us into a dance of reflecting back the kind of warped and narrow logic of those institutions to themselves. And so we have, with a lot of support and a lot of community, and Baljeet and other parts of community have joined our board to help shake us up, to help collapse the separation between philanthropy and community. We've been asking ourselves, what is the magic, what is the abundance that lies on the other side of metrics and outcomes, of strategies and theories of change? What is possible if we break out of the logic trap of those things? And I would say for philanthropic institutions, there's a real question of our times of how can you change the thing while being the thing? And so for Len Kelly, we entered an inquiry of what would it be like if we surrendered these institutional structures that have been holding our wealth or entrapping our wealth? What else might be available on the other side of these structures? What else might become visible to us that we can't see currently? What abundance might lie on the other side of scarcity? And so after years of contorting ourselves, only to find ourselves back in the same place where we started, we decided to close and dismantle our institution. And I'll just read out the words that we used. We will make space to reimagine how wealth, capital, and social justice can coexist in service of all life, now and for future generations. And when we made that choice, or when our trustees made that choice, we didn't know what this space might look like. When we said we will hold space or create space, we didn't know what it would result in, or how it would dictate or help shape how our remaining money and assets would be used. We just knew in our guts, in our spirit, that we had to open a portal for a different logic. Having shared that with the world, what immediately came back was, you're spending down. You're abandoning the field. You're offloading your responsibility onto community. And so we were immediately back in the same logic that we were trying to disrupt and shift. And of course, we still struggle with that day in, day out, with this logic of the field that we inhabit. And we have very often, we use the term redistribution because we were trying to evade the word spend down. It's not a spend down, we're redistributing. We're trying to do something different. Yeah, but it's a spend down, right? And so we have wrestled with this thing for a couple of years since we made that decision of what does it mean to hold space for genuine difference to emerge. And we are now in the process of creating what I can best describe here in very poor language as a transitional architecture for an alternative to be born, or alternatives to be born, a plurality to be born out of. Which I would say the transitional architecture is needed because here we still are. We're still philanthropy. We're still Lankelly Chase. We don't want our fingerprints. We don't want the DNA of the old to move through to the new. So alongside of this institution, we're trying to create the space for community to come together and go deep as possible into the fundamentals of how does money shape us? How does money transact between us? What do we want to imagine is possible if money were to flow and to be just one life-affirming asset amongst many within our communities? What would that take? What would that look like? How would that show up in our being with each other? And what would need to shift in our relationships, our practices? Because this is not just about philanthropy, it's about all those who philanthropy has resourced and how their mindsets has been shaped by this logic as well. And so what it takes right now is to try and hold open a portal for people to walk through to a different logic model while still in the midst of the grip of the institution, the regulated, institutionalized norms that we know. Which is, I'm trying to think of a polite phrase for it. It messes with your mind to try and be one thing while being another simultaneously. And it's just a little bit early for me to put more meat on the bones of what exactly is planned, but the intention is to break with the logic models and to enable a group of people who are of community to define what resourcing, what assets, what capital, what wealth looks like to them, and then shape, if philanthropy continues to exist, shape philanthropy back from their grassroots back into the institutions. And see what happens.
Some of us, we hang around, we use words like onto shifts. Partly because of what Brother Bayo said and really rung true for Alnor Lada and I when we were writing the book, of something around the justice will get us a seat at the table, but it will never allow us to leave the house of modernity. And there's something in what Julian was speaking to about that portal, about when he said that the plan, I heard prayer, like holding open a prayer that something can come through and other ways of being and knowing can continue to come through. And in that way, I wanted to ask Baljeet, who has had I'll use my words, affliction, assignment, and adventure, to both be a trustee with Lankelly Chase while also really being in the communities and in being with. And I wanted to ask you the question, how is liberation and liberation practices a form of wealth?
Hello. Julian and I make a great double act, because you can hear the English accent, right, folks? and you all think I'm really clever. It's brilliant when I come to the United States, but but it's also interesting when Julian and I are sitting together and many philanthropic institutions or wealth holders or donor advisors will look at Julian and be like, but how did you get your board to make that decision? And Julian goes, this is my board. Because that's all happening up there and who's making decisions. So thank you, Lynn. Thank you, everyone, for letting us visit and be on these lands. Sister Pat. Brother Bayo. Thank you for reminding me why I'm a recovering human rights lawyer. Because we went into the systems as women of colour, fighting, using the law as a tool for change around the world. And I was the international human rights and children and refugee lawyer, yeah. I did that for 24 years. And we were trying, but it just kept reproducing itself and falling back and falling back. So thank you for bringing the wisdom of our ancestors to say, yeah, Martin Luther King probably would have said that too. And thank you for giving me the language to now go, I know now I am a recovering human rights lawyer. Honestly, the tension's tough when you even are getting onto the flight to these lands. It really is. We can feel it, right? We can feel it. But I want to say to you, it's not new. It's not new. So my question would be, why haven't we been listening? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, we could go on and on and on. It's the same repeat cycle happening again and again, and it's pretty lazy, right? So our question would be, why haven't we been listening? But we're at a moment where our brothers and sisters in Europe and the North Americas are now going, oh my God, it's in our face. It's hurting my children and the lands that we live on. So we're here together, side by side. Because we are side by side. There's no overthrowing, trying to take it. No, side by side now. Mother Earth is calling for us to be in relationship. So that's why I turn to kind of liberation practice. This is going to make me emotional. I want to thank you, the Black feminist movement from these islands. Thank you. Black scholarship from these lands as well. Thank you. The queer movement. Thank you. There is scholarship of generational scholarship for liberatory practice. It's not new, shiny things. We've got technologies, whether they're old, whether they're new. There are some beautiful technologies we've got, right? And we need to really start loving those technologies. And this isn't just IT, folks. This is just new forms of technologies, right? And so, you know, understanding how we dismantle these dominant systems, we've got scholarship, abolition, you know, transformative justice, disability rights justice movement. We've got scholarship. Decolonization is not about us wanting to take over white folk and take over your systems. No, thank you. Your systems are painful. That's not the deal of decolonization. It's just a form of scholarship of generations to go, how do you understand the pieces of dominance to remove it and just make it flow away? So that's where I would say liberatory practice has long been with us. If you want to see some liberatory practice and collective liberation work, the Black disability movement, there's some beautiful work there that has been building and building for generations, and it is beautiful. But I wanted to go to this thing of wealth holders. Those who've got money and how we have a relationship with money is that is capital. The people who are holding the money are capital holders. And let's understand how we can have a different relationship with capital and money and how she can be in service with us. And for us to use philanthropy as a form of capital to maybe be a catalyst for other capital, because there's a whole lot more over there and over here and everywhere else. So how could we use that as a catalyst? So I remember someone said to us, how do we use philanthropy to, really address the extractive economies? Well, how about taking philanthropy's endowments outside of the extractive economy? Take it out. Just take it out. Let's see what happens. Because a lot of folk in the funding and philanthropic world would know this, but a lot of justice movements and other folks don't. Most philanthropic institutions have 96 to 95%, that's the UK and US, in the extractive economy. We only give out 4%. So unrestrict the 96, right? Why not test that out? Let's just take it out of the extractive economy and see what happens. So that's what we're doing. So that's the first bit. It could all be so simple. Right? And so then it's the liberatory practices. So then I would say that, being alongside brothers and sisters and folk, incredible folk like Matthew and others, the new technologies, the digital space, not-for-profit sector, philanthropic institutions are just another form of institutions. What we're doing in the philanthropic space is we have to also witness and create change, as Julian said, across other institutions. Because I've been in lots of institutions, I was a human rights lawyer. I've worked at the UN, I've been an advisor for the EU Commission, I've been in those systems. And for my sins, I also dabbled at Yale University and University of Oxford and helped build the Innovation Centre. They are dominant systems too, and dominant institutions. So when we talk about wealth, where's the knowledge? Who do we see as knowledge holders? Who do we see as knowledge co-producers, co-creators? Who can make us see and feel the world differently? Where is our ancestral knowledge, the ecological knowledge that has long been here? Where is the beauty of reimagining different mystical worlds, Afrofuturism that helps us be? My brother Bayo and my brothers and sisters in Africa who are making us feel and be and shape new technologies. That's the worlds that we need to be in. So philanthropic institutions of doing this capital is one thing, but every institution we're currently using in this world also needs to be shifted and moved, because it is supremacy at its force. We can decide what dominant systems we want to be in the world. And right now, we run the risk of even the cryptocurrency world being really just a bit more caring, white cisgender men trying to help the planet Earth and completely forgetting about the rest of humanity, right? And on the Earth. So philanthropy in Greek means the love of humanity. It's already defunct because it's forgot about Mother Earth. So we need revamps, evolution. And so I think liberatory practices are already here. They're in our communities. I have the honor of working with cultural innovators, producers in the UK who are folks who are young women and men of color who are in the projects and who are dancing and who are feeling joy and who are trying to connect and communicate and trying to be with their ancestors. We are already here. We don't need sadness and melancholy that is everywhere right now and that energy. Let's be joyous. Let's be side by side. Let's experiment. Let's test. Let's love. And let's see what we can do with the flow of this thing called money, her. Let's see how we can make her flow. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm feeling there's so much in the room. There's so much that was and is not just said with words, but said with what is behind those words that we can all feel, that we all can honor and acknowledge, that brings us into the subject of the interrelatedness and in this animate field that we are honoring. That we are honoring even in the composting and even in naming these systems and bringing in big pieces like the domination, the supremacy, the murdered. Yeah, there's something coming about asking, what is it within ourselves, within our cultures, within our ways of being and knowing that are in need of liberation, that are in need of liberating. And I'll layer one more on that just for the sake of Chronos, dancing with Kairos time, which is that we're standing on these lands that created a genocidal enslavement democracy that is at this place at a time where we know that the metacrisis is beyond just these lands that we're standing in, and yet we're all entangled and all is entangled. So the question about what within ourselves and our cultures and our ways of being and thinking and knowing within this broader and also the macro and the micro moments that we find ourselves in, these prophetic times, these moments we invoke the metacrisis. We're asking for some wisdom, some guidance, and not that we're asking you each, as in reifying or thingifying you as some sort of wisdom holder or keeper, but honoring what is coming through you in this moment as we're in this field together. And that way I open it up and I trust us to do some jazz.
When you looked at me and said murdered, missing and murdered Indigenous people, in particular Indigenous women, I was thinking about the phenomenon about that, and there's one theory about it that says that this is primarily the activity of the men who are doing the labor and the literal dirty work of the extractive industries, trying to satisfy a survival need in a situation that distances them from their humanity. So their humanity is being extracted from them simultaneous as they are extracting the vital organs out of this Mother Earth, which causes them to not even be able to see my sisters as human beings. And in fact, the whole system, whose humanity has also been extracted, does not even feel to look for them or count them or have any statistics about their disappearance. So I say in this power over paradigm, I usually, see if I can do this, I always do this gesture in which all the fruits of the labor are traveling to the top, one way we look at it. It's a situation in which you must have power over another in order to have what you need. It is antithetical to cooperation and collaboration, which is antithetical to the sacred hoop of life that is the Mother Earth, this interbeing in which whatever you do affects every other being, this situation that is such that I cannot be well if you are not well. So it's a situation in which mammals sometimes find themselves, in which the mothers are eating their young, in which the protectors of life are devouring some of the deepest holders of relationship to this Mother Earth. And so let's think about the title of this session, this prophetic time. What does that mean? This prophetic time. So this is a time that has been prophesied, that we would come upon a great hardship. My elders say we would come upon a time in which yes means no and no means yes. We're solidly there. Don't believe your eyes, believe what I say. But also collapse, but also a certain amount of suffering, but also, and this is what I feel like I'm witnessing, the pushing together, the side-by-siding of unlikely allies. Because as we are being confronted with shocking losses, it is evoking inside of us, no, wait, I care about that. I really care about that. And somebody that we might not have suspected is also over there saying, hey, I care about that, for different reasons maybe. So they say that this is also the time of the coming together. So when I think about that prophetic time, there's another piece that comes up around the money, and that is, I think about what Chief Seattle had to say. He said, one day they're going to find out they can't eat money. And we're like, I think we're about this close. And so something that I go around saying is, this money that you're hoarding and holding back, and it's got a shelf life. It's not going to be any good pretty soon, but right now it could actually serve a purpose in directing resources and bringing things together. It still has this meaning that we have assigned to it, this agreement. And so we could be mitigating suffering, future suffering. We could be looking ahead and saying, wow, these things are coming. How can we best alleviate that? But I also see it as alleviating suffering from the past. So there's reparations work, there's forgiveness work. And the way I look at it is, when the next generation, so I feel like we're in a transition between one world and the next. And from indigenous counting, some people say we're in the 5th world or the 6th world. We have lost worlds before. And so it's a big moment. That's also part of that prophetic, right? So the moving from this world to the next, those who are going to continue on, maybe it's going to be a whole bunch of us, maybe it's only going to be a few. But I say, how can my life serve those ones who are going to continue on into the next world? And a big part of that for me is, how do I clean their soil for their seeds? And part of that is making use of 20/20 hindsight, seeing where we went awry, seeing where the harm was done. And not everybody's going to do it, and nation states seem to think they have too much at stake to do it. But we can do it. And every time we acknowledge the harms, there's less bitterness. Every time we say, I didn't know that part of the story. Right now, we can sit together and talk about what actually happened from our side's perspective in which harm was done. Those reparations really matter. Those are consciousness shifts. Those are nervous system relaxations. Those are a new place to launch and look at the situation from. But I feel like it's also cleaning the soil for the new seeds. And I guess the last thing I'll say in this moment is just that, I recently was in a situation that I've never been in before. I've never really hung out and spent any time with straight up, full-on money makers in my life. And it was wild. I could help the earth, but only if I make a lot of money. I'm like, do you not know what time it is? And so I said, life itself is going to have to be enough profit for you. But what I also realized is since I've been in the nonprofit sector, I'm like, so the nonprofit sector is the cleanup crew for the big party of capitalism and making money going on up here. And meanwhile, the nonprofit crew is running around trying to keep us connected to earth, trying to keep us connected to water, trying to keep us connected to each other, trying to preserve our humanity. Well, this party is raging on. So that was a little inspiring, I gotta say. Yeah, I'll stop there.
All right, all right. What is becoming clear in this moment when I'm in rooms with people whose hearts are broken, but who have found some capacity to remember and to dream, and to dream the dreams that our grandchildren's grandchildren deserve, to dream the dreams that our grandchildren's grandchildren are right now whispering in your ear. They're already extending their gratitude to us for how we showed up in this moment, right? So if you're really quiet, you can hear them. They're already talking to us, right? It's going to be okay, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be okay, and it's going to be hard. But I think that the thing I hear loudest to those who are listening is, we got to dance. We got to sing. In the circle we were in this morning, just not to get too much into it, and other folks can share who were there. And, you know, we had two folks in the circle who had almost the same dream that involved being in a vehicle headed towards the cliff. And everybody was dancing. And at the last moment, the moment at which, that Thelma and Louise moment, we didn't actually go off the cliff, but we danced to the edge. So that's the instructions that I'm trying to follow. As painful as this is, that creativity, as our sister Anasa, who's the steward of Historic Claiborne Temple, where the sanitation workers were organizing and the women were making the food in the basement, and they were making those posters, those I Have a Man posters, right? As King was there, sitting with this crack, right, on the edge of this understanding, right? And she's there in that sacred place, which was, not to get too much into it, but part of the work that I do is that place was going to be turned into a beer garden. And work was done to ensure that that sacred place could be stewarded by the people of that community for the sake of creating a center for radical imagination, creativity, and dreaming. She leads this work. It's called The Big We. It's called The Big We, and it's about the role of creativity. And she's an artist who reminds all of us that it is our sacred right to create. Creativity is who we are, and we have been cut off from our capacity to dream and create and to co-create. And the artists and the healers and the cultural workers, they can guide us in this, but it's not just their responsibility, it's all of our responsibility. We have a duty to create. So we have to be in relationship and in connection and listening so that the unexpected can happen, and we can be surprised and delighted by all of the wisdom which is forever beyond our comprehension. So just, I think that's what I want to share. It is a time to create. It is a time to create.
I'm feeling gratitude for our assembly here, and specifically I want to bring this to mind. Where's my sister Victoria? There you go. Victoria did a thing, and she brought us together in the Three Black Men Project, which I'm really grateful for. We traveled around the world. She made it happen. And there's some of you here who made that happen with us too. So I just want to thank you for that, and for the life force that went to that project, I can still feel the beauty of those moments. I used to describe myself as a black scholar. That changed, and I started to describe myself as a scholar of blackness. But then, when you're in the midst of Orland Bishop and Resma Menakem, I realized I was really black. So I reverted back to black scholar. there's no dancing away from that. I realize I'm pretty black, so I am a black scholar of blackness, I guess. But I bring that up. To say something that I said to the folks today as well. My keynote was called "Let's Not Save the World." I said it in this way. I may not have said it exactly with these words, but I'm saying it here. Emancipation is not salvation. We usually conflate the two. As a body from the African continent, I have a very well-honed suspicion of salvation and salvific enterprises. I'm quite acculturated into doing the stank face when someone comes to save me. I'm not going to do it for you here, but I have that. My entire public intellectual work is the stank face for salvation. And this is not grounded in some highfalutin philosophical work or thesis. This is grounded in material lives and history. The first slave ship was called Jesus Saves. It was commissioned by Queen Elizabeth I, 1563, captained by John Hawkins, sailed from West Africa to the West Indies, specifically Jesus of Lubeck. And no one got up on that ship until you were saved, unless you were saved, rather. And John Hawkins had sermons on the slave ship. It reminds me of politics today. A lot of our politics looks like Jesus of Lubeck. It's like we're installing solar panels on slave ships.
That's a word right there.
And so, with Orland and Resma, we created this counter-cartographical project, which was to kind of tell the story of blackness, not blackness as an oppositional force, not blackness as I'm going to get me some. I need a seat at the table. Not blackness as an identity issue, but blackness as a radical field of strange abundance that we're only beginning to wiggle our postures into. This has nothing to do with how I look. This blackness is cosmic. This blackness is the soil. This blackness is the loam of the earth. This blackness is my mother's womb. This blackness is where seeds grow and where our eyes learn to see in the darkness of our brain. It's just that the Enlightenment did a number on us, and so we think that darkness is pathological. And so we retraced that transatlantic voyage of captivity. We retraced it. We traveled from LA, and then we went to Bahia, and then we went to West Africa. And our vocation was saying there's space. There's space. It may not look like it. It seems we've run out of room. But this is not the time to make more room. This is the time to make sanctuary. Making more room. Making more room is what a lot of our politics is tethered to. but we're running out of room. We're running out of space. Making sanctuary is queer. It's about opening up strange spaces within the captivities of closure. It's how a divine being like Eshu could find room in a slave ship and creolize the Caribbean and Brazil and the world. Let's not save the world. It's not. This is not time for that. This is time for a different kind of work. So emancipatory politics will not look like a rival. It will not look like a destination. It is going to be tender. It's a politics of tenderness. It's going to invite us into spaces of tears, where our tears are not ones of sadness, but are necessary libations to make the soil ready for the kinds of things that want to sprout. My elders are teaching me that a new Orisha wants to be born. And I was on a trip filming another movie in Brazil recently, and I was taken on this ship to go give offerings to Yemoja for the community. And the Mama Lorisha put the basket of prayers and tears in my hands, among others. And we leaned over the side of the ship. And we put the bananas and pineapples and everything and put it in the waters with singing and dancing, all of us dressed in white, somewhere in Rio. And as we sailed back, this sister fell to the ground and started to hug everyone. She was possessed by Yemoja, and she started to hug everyone. And in that moment, when she hugged me, I realized that the new gods that want to be born will not come from pure places. They will not emerge from the surface. They're not going to come from blueprints and manifestos. They're going to come from the places of deep tenderness between us. They're going to come from plastic. They're going to come from debris. They're going to come from composting places. They're not going to come from neat grounds. They're going to come from our disagreements, where we cannot see eye to eye. Those are where the new gods will come from filth. The Orishas will come from that. And they will shape the soul, and they will teach us how to look. That is the story of blackness, not just the story of violent capture, the story that there's still more, and that we can make sanctuary, even in times when James Baldwin says there's only fire.
Sure. So what time is it? Gali Jug. So UK via the Punjab. The age of darkness, we've known for hundreds of thousands of years in my ancestry, because the darkness is where the light's also going to come. And for me, the beauty of blackness is where it's also going to come. We're here. We will have disagreements, will have challenges, we have to be brave, we have to be bold. Some folk are not used to being challenged, and the uncomfort is a defensiveness, or you don't like me. This brother here, when we were with TRC and Commonweal, an assumption, here's the brown woman, you know, she looks a bit ethnic, a bit exotic. Is she Brazilian and Puerto Rican? Oh my God, no. Right? No. South Asian from Britain, right? So when we were going to share Lankelly Chase and what we've done together, and just the beginning of what is going to emerge. You never know what the assumptions are going to be of what Julian says, and then I speak, right? And I turned to him, I said, I love you. It's been hard, but we're here. And so all the white American brothers I've just met who are still trying to figure me out and a bit uncomfortable with me over the last couple of days, I love you too. Let's play in the systems. Let's design. Let's be practitioners. Imagine UK and the US mashing stuff up. Let's do it. And so, come on. Let's play in the systems. We can do this. So, Victoria, sister, I love you. Bayo, 3 black men are coming to the UK. Coming to the UK. So anyone else who wants to come to the UK and play, if you want to invite us back, we got this. We got this.
Can you imagine what my board is like? One of the things that I've forgotten what the question was, but one of the things that I get asked is, what does it take for people to let go? You're an institution that is letting go of its assets, its power. What does it take to let go? And there's a couple of things there. One is what creates the impulse, and then what maintains the impulse. What's the rigor and discipline of the work? And one of the things I've noticed about whiteness is that people in philanthropy get told a lot that they need to do the work. Go off and do the work and come back. And a lot of that work is about ego, healing trauma, personal trauma, trying to contend with the traps of status and the unlearning of comfort, of competence, of identity. And out of that, for quite a lot of people, comes a lot of joy, a lot of enlightenment, even some higher states of consciousness. And but there's also something there about, okay, well done, you've worked on yourself. Haven't you just got more of the goodies of capitalism? And I have noticed with a lot of my colleagues, I don't mean necessarily my organization, but across philanthropy, that the work on ourselves is often a reinforcement of our own individualism. And what we have to learn, while we've unlearned a whole load of other stuff, what we have to learn is collectivism. And Baljeet often says to us, I'm hearing a lot of the I and not much of the we. And what we need to learn is how to be in community with each other, how to dance together, how to sing together, how to eat together, how to honor one another. And I've been in many places where you see the kind of rigidity of whiteness and the kind of keeping aloof from each other because we don't know how to be with each other, which then gets institutionalized and entrenched in philanthropy and the separations and the awkwardness and the dance that we have to do around each other's identities. And a dear colleague and extraordinary practitioner in the UK, Fazana Khan, accompanied some CEOs who I was chairing one time, and we were talking about racial justice just in the UK when we're just beginning to give ourselves permission to use those words. And the CEOs, who are overwhelmingly white, talked about how lonely it was to lead their organizations during these times of extraordinary change. And Fazana, at the end, turned to them and said, this loneliness is a practice. It's a practice of separation. You know, you were already and always surrounded by the communities who could support you in this time, but you have kept yourself separate from them. And so, yeah, just to say, I think that for a lot of us, we have to do the work, but we also have to learn the collectivism and learn how to be with each other. Yeah, that's where the joy is.
I'm just learning so much from our relatives from Uberdare. I'm loving it in so many ways. But, you know, so I was in a community in which we were, our reason for coming together was to reimagine money and protect the sacred. And a big part, Orland Bishop was a part of that. And so a big part of that was, he said, and I would agree, is that we were exploring our unconscious agreements that we had with money together from all different parts of the money spectrum. And in that process, one thing that I really saw was that the cardinal rule really about money is you must not be foolish with it. Whether you have a little or whether you have a lot, the rule stands. And so it's so inhibiting. It's so inhibiting to, like, if you make a bad investment, or if you don't put it someplace where someone can't steal it, or if you get hoodwinked or whatever, you buy a counterfeit, like that's just like some kind of horror. And so one thing that I'm curious about is, like, I think it would serve for perhaps each one of us to consider, well, what's the fear there? Like, what is the end horrible thing that you become if, oh my gosh, you did somehow something foolish happened with the money? Because I think somehow we have to disperse that fear. And so when I hear you speaking, it's like you're doing a part of that work, right? And so what I found in this community was that if we were in community with these questions and these explorations, that people found courage, people found, I'm not insane for thinking about releasing these things, for moving in a different way. And so if we had community to support each other in that, people could take risks and they could face their attorneys, their own dang attorneys. I'm like, those attorneys are working for you, aren't they? But they could face their attorneys, they could face their financial advisors, they could face their family, which was also, I mean, that's well, you know how families are. So anyway, that's no small thing. But they could do it. They could do it. And so there's that part about the agreement of money. And then, going back to, I'm trying to remember who was saying this. Might have been Matthew, might have been Taj. But also Orlin brought this up. So money is already here. I don't know. If you've ever listened to Orlin speak, you can't ever really quote him. But what I got out of what he said was, he inspires things, though. And what I got out of what he said was, look, it's already here and it's already in everything. So even, this holy alchemical spirit of the money. Why? Because it has the alchemy power to become so many things. So rather than, because my thought has always been, let's just get rid of it. If we could just get rid of it. Then we would be forced back to this Mother Earth. But there's this other idea that, what if we change the agreement? Since it's already in everything. So it's like, if we could change our agreement with it, then it actually becomes a lever to change a lot of things all at once. And then back to this thing about the shelf life of money. We had this really, I mean, I might have sounded like I was all on top of it, but it was a big conversation for me too, for the guys in the room who was having that conversation. But we were talking about retirement, and a couple of things came up with that. And it was, one, this idea about how it's worked, where you could either be secure or you could actually live your life. Mm-hmm. And so this whole concept of retirement is I'm going to play the game of security, and hopefully end up enough ahead where I get to have a little bit of time at the end of my life where I actually get to try to live. Mm. All I wanted to say there is, what have we got to lose? Mm. What have we got to lose by taking some really big darn risks right now? Mm.
A lot of the center of the work the joy, the play, the vocation, the dance that we do at the center is what sometimes we call ether, and or coming back into right relationship with life force itself, and finding our ways to make sanctuary, finding our ways to move from holding out for that future of security, recognizing the false promise and the false hope of that. And we dance in this moment, and we dance with deep time, and we dance with non-linearity of time, and we dance with what are the winds that are at our back and the storms that are coming. And in that way, we wanted to offer back out this afternoon some of what we've been stirring and stewing and walking with, and expand the circle. And so thank you. My beloved brother, who I do a lot of this work with, Alnor Lada, has taught me the spirit of Shukran in his lineage, and it is a nod to the collective entanglement with gratitude. And so in that spirit, I offer gratitude to all our relations.
Thank you, everyone.
Don't take it, don't, don't take it, don't, don't take it, don't, don't take it, don't take it, don't, don't take it, don't.